It's always a great day to talk about food and fine dining, and it's even more exciting when there might be gold medals involved. In our Jan-Feb issue, we gave a sneak peek at the Culinary Olympics, a global stage on which Roanoke will be represented in February by Chef Ted Polfelt, who I'm thrilled to welcome to the podcast today. Thank you for being on the show today.
Thanks for having me. I'm thrilled.
So Ted is the full-time culinary instructor at the Al Pollard Culinary School at Virginia Western Community College, executive chef at Roanoke Country Club, co-owner of Brood Restaurant and Bar, and a team chef on the 2024 ACF Culinary Team USA. Do you sleep at night, man?
Sundays.
Sundays, just
No,
Sundays. Got it. And I know this is a bit of a time crunch because you were busy preparing to head to the 2024 Olympics, which we'll talk about in just a few minutes. But that's really exciting. So congratulations.
Thank you. It's been a build up for the last 3 years.
Yeah, it sounds like it. And we're going to get into that process here in just a minute. But I want to talk about you just real quick. I know I shared half of your resume just now, but you've got decades of experience in this industry, having worked as executive chef of a management team of some really excellent restaurants in town. You've also served as president and vice president of the Southwest Virginia chapter of the American Culinary Federation, and you were named 2016 ACF Southeast Region Chef of the Year. Congrats, man.
Thanks. Appreciate it.
So you're no novice to this profession, certainly. But I'm curious about when it all started for you. Is this something you saw yourself doing like when you were growing up, or is this something you fell into?
Not at all. My first restaurant job was at the Brambleton Deli right down
Nice.
the road when I was in high school, and I got a job there because my good buddy was washing dishes there, and I wanted to hang out.
Yeah, you never really said, I'm going to go to the Olympics one way or
not at all.
another.
Actually, I always joke with my students, I'm like, early on in my career, I didn't get into it for the food. To me, It was like, I like the chaos of the restaurant industry. It reminds me of playing sports. You're trying to sell tickets.
Yep.
There's adrenaline and people. And later on, I fell in love with food. But initially, no. So it took me to culinary school, and then I came back to Roanoke. I've tried to escape many times, and I love this town. I wouldn't have it any other way. I was in the Navy. I've traveled. But I love it here in Roanoke. Thrilled to be back. And I've had a long career in the restaurant business. I always tell people I guess I'm 39, but I'm like 59 in chef years because it feels like a time jumps.
I was born 40, so that's okay. I understand old souls. That's not a problem. And actually, you mentioned being 39. Ted was also in our 40 under 40 back in the class of 2020. So our Jan-Feb issue, of course, is the class of 2024 now already.
I know. I saw it sitting there. I was like, oh yeah, that was a strange year. I was really excited, and then 2020 took a weird turn.
Yeah, slightly, a little bit. And so actually that class, when I was writing up your feature, that's where I first learned about the Culinary Olympics. And I thought that was like the coolest thing I'd ever heard of. I want to be a judge. How do you get to be a judge for that? Like that's the competition I want to eat at for sure.
It's pretty neat.
Yeah. And so you and Chef John Shop, actually, you guys attended the 2016 competition to see Team USA compete. And I was curious if you could give a quick overview. Like what does that entail? What does it look like as a spectator? Viewer, as a spectator,
yeah.
Exactly.
So as a spectator, it's this show's been held, I believe, since 1904, every 4 years in Germany. For the most part, it used to be in Frankfurt, but it's moved around. And so it's the largest team-based culinary competition in the world. And so when they hold these, it's basically like a food show mixed with a furniture show, mixed with restaurant. So it's all restaurant equipment.
I want to go to there so bad.
And so all this is happening. About 90,000 people come through the trade show over the couple days, which kind of almost equates to the population of our town.
No kidding.
And while this is going on, they've got these mock kitchens set up covered in plexiglass, and these teams go in and they produce their program while being watched by judges, customers. People can walk by and watch you. You kind of feel like a caged animal.
I was going to say, it's a good thing that like the open kitchen concepts are popular right now because that feels very like nerve-wracking.
It's a little intrusive. But so in the center of all this, there's actually a dining room, and the people that come to that show can buy tickets. And so once the teams are done with their preparation time, it's a live service. So there's two parts to the competition. There's what we call Restaurant of Nations, where they feed 110 people a three-course meal, and that's just like a restaurant. I mean, different tables are set at different times. They pull tickets from different countries, and so that's a whole experience.
You're in a high-end dinner rush is what you're doing.
A little bit.
Gosh. And so, so in 2016, 57 national teams, 2,000 individual competitors, drew 250,000 people, and Shop was quoted as saying, the dishes prepared help shape the next generation of food. And 4 years of this team, being on this team, is equivalent to 10 years of high-end restaurant experience. Now, you have more than 10 years of restaurant experience, but now you probably do feel like you're about 100 after all this.
A little bit. But it's cool because everybody cares so much. There's so many. We've got about a dozen coaches, advisors that are at every practice. And so when we first started out, we were doing Zoom meetings, just literally throwing stuff at the wall. It's like, all right, come up with 6 finger foods. And so you try to theme it around Americana because you want to represent our country and regionality. And so a lot of this stuff gets shot down or it gets manipulated or somebody else takes an idea and runs with it. And so evolutionary process
Yeah.
nonstop with ups and downs, which is why that kind of soundbite goes in there, just because, I don't know. When I come up with new menu items, usually we change menus seasonally.
Right.
You got a special here and there. You got a wine dinner. Here we're throwing out 50 ideas a month for like full dishes and things. And
Yeah.
so it's just a long process.
Your brain must just be going all the time.
A lot of times.
Yeah, and you actually had to go through a couple of 3 or so intense rounds to even get on this team. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. What was that? What was that like? I mean,
So I actually tried out for the 2020 team, and I fell on my face fantastically. It was at Disney, and that phase was very similar to the next one for the next team. So when I didn't make the 2020 team, it's all right.
Yeah.
I kept my head
Got
up.
back up and went back at it.
Kept going. So when they had tryouts for the next team, for the 2024 team, this team, we had to do 2 different phases. The first phase was a Zoom meeting where they interviewed us, because at the end of the day, the 6 of us have to walk into this kitchen and be able to work together.
Right.
I mean, so personalities play a part. Chefs don't have egos at all, so that's never an issue.
and that's never anything
No.
I've heard before.
So after that, I had to go to Kansas City and St. Louis on 2 separate occasions to do a cold food program, which is very kind of old charcuterie, finger food, salads, and stuff like that, and then a hot food program the next round. And they chose from a pool of us, and that's kind of how our journey started. And ever since, we've met we meet every month in person somewhere around the country. Biology sponsors us, and we have Zoom meetings every week to hold ourselves accountable. I mean, the amount of paperwork that goes into this stuff is kind of ridiculous.
Yeah, I guess so. You just want to focus on the food instead of your...
No, it's like list for list for list, because you don't want to forget anything. And
Of course not.
I mean, we're all human. You're all going to have mistakes. So, I mean, it's an equipment list,
Yeah.
prep list, production list, grocery list, all these things just to make sure we have everything organized.
Right. And so Anthony, when he wrote the piece, of course, we're bi-monthly, so we had to write it in advance. But, he got a little sneak peek at the menu. Nothing he gave away in the magazine, of course, because
Thank
we
you.
want to keep your advantage, because we want Team USA to win, obviously. But so this led to, you went to the Culinary World Competition in Luxembourg back in November. And so the team prepared a 3-course meal for her 110 reserved seats, as you noted. What was it like being in the spotlight like that?
It was interesting.
You're not a spectator now.
I've done a lot of what I'd say local or regional competitions around the United States, probably about 30 in the last 10 years or so leading up to this. But being in another country, surrounded by Europeans and thousands of people watching you behind this plexiglass, was a very different experience. And the
Yeah.
whole time we were competing, you've got to think that a lot of these European countries drive there. It's like going to Charlotte.
Right.
So, I mean, they've got literally buses of people. It was like being at a soccer game.
Yeah.
I mean, they reached the point of the service, Chef Dan, our captain, and I kind of joked because he was trying to tell me to pull something out of the freezer to get set for service. And 6 feet away, I couldn't hear him because there were bullhorns and the Swedes on one side of us.
Bullhorns? Oh my
it was nuts.
gosh.
It was wild.
It's like Oktoberfest. Like,
A little bit, which sounds like fun until you're trying to get food out.
it's fun
you're
for
nervous.
me as a
Yeah.
spectator, probably not for you. Well, and so from the experience itself, and maybe you're obviously learning a lot in regards to the competition itself. But are you learning things as a chef? I mean, things that help you grow and move forward.
Absolutely. I always tell my students at the culinary school and the staff that I work with, I'm like, competing changed the way I cook in a great way. I'm much more organized when I cook, when I prepare a wine dinner. I
interesting.
approach everything differently. I think I design plates differently because I want to make sure that, just like in a competition, that texture is represented, that color is represented, that I'm balancing the acid, the sweetness, the fattiness. I think I approach things differently because of that, just from learning through the process. And so I try to carry that same thing to my students or my staff. And it's like, hey, you're making a soup. It should have the same elements you're thinking about a salad or an entree. It's like you need crunch, you need fat. Like, I don't know.
Yeah. No, I love that it's pushed you. Like you're not complacent by any means.
No.
That doesn't really seem like your style, Ted.
No,
I got to be honest.
Not yet. One day, maybe.
And I think one of the interesting rules that I found, so you needed some strategies, materials, but the materials were interesting. You needed things like compostable spoons, stringent rules to prevent waste. And I thought that was really interesting.
So it's funny, the difference between us and Europe. And it was a big learning curve for us when we first started out because, no offense, we're 10, 20 years behind the rest of the world when it comes to environmental standards and all that stuff. And I'm just a cook. I don't know anything better than that. I'm just going into a competition. But so even their rules on composting are much different than ours. Like there can be no fatty animal products whatsoever. So, I mean, some vegetables that I could compost here that I kind of cook with, you can't over there.
So even your ingredients are different than what you're expecting.
So they look harshly too when you go into a kitchen with like single-use plastics, plastic wrap. I mean, so tasting spoons, which plastic for the most part. We use in the industry kind of all over the place. I mean, all those things we had to get rid of. And so we've had to think about our program, the way we do things, the way we set up to make sure we're not using disposable pastry bags. We're using reusable zip ties, even though zip ties seem like a thing that shouldn't be a big deal. But there's kind of we found out in Luxembourg that it's amazing. The world loves American culture and American music, but we're not always the most liked in certain competitions.
Well, they might not think we're sustainable as the rest of them, for sure.
Maybe. So we felt that we were looked on pretty harshly, and so we want to make sure that we over-deliver.
Yeah, well, yeah, absolutely. So 2024 Culinary Olympics, those are coming up. You'll be headed to Germany again. Sort of a culmination of all the work you've been doing over the last 4 years. I mean, this is not something you just decided to do. This is 4 years of teamwork coming behind this. I mean, that's pretty incredible.
It's exciting and exhausting. And, when I first started this journey, actually, there was a chef who was on the last team who is actually from locally. He was from Blacksburg. His name's Scott Craig. He used to run Myers Park down in Charlotte. And I had exchanged some emails, congratulatory, and I was like, what advice do you have? And he sent me this list of keep ibuprofen on you for practices. Because seriously, our practices start at 4 a.m. And sometimes we don't get back to the hotel till midnight. We rinse and repeat, do it again, and then hop on a plane and go home. And so he gave me this long list of things to take care of my body along the way. But then in the last sentence, he was like, it's going to be like Christmas. You're going to be very, very excited. It's going to be right there, but then it's going to be gone.
Yeah.
And it's still kind of hung over my head. I'm still very excited because we're only, 2 months away and we'll be done, but I think it's going to be eerie on the other side.
You'll blink and where did it all go?
Yeah.
Man, you got to hang out with your wife and see her again maybe once in a while.
Absolutely. She's going to be very excited.
Yeah. So obviously, as if you didn't have enough going on, you really decided to take it up a notch this year. And so you recently opened a new restaurant in Salem. You'll read about our dining review from Layla in our JanFeb issue. It's a wonderful taste of what to expect there, but of brewed restaurant and bar. So the photos that John Park took are beautiful. You and your team really had a gorgeous space to work with to start with, but then you made it even more beautiful. The pictures are always phenomenal. I've got to eat those short ribs. They look ridiculous. But what was it in the middle of all this that you just decided to go for it?
So I worked for a restaurant group in town, like you said earlier, for about 2 decades. So I'm used to the independent restaurant business. I love the independent restaurant business. And so when I left and took a job at Roanoker Country Club while I was teaching, I love the restaurant business. I grew up in it. I literally became an adult in the restaurant business. It taught me many life skills. So I think it got a really bad rap post-COVID. There's some bad things about our industry. There's some good things, but we're only in control of what we can control. So when the Blue Apron spot became available, former Scott Switzer owned it. Him and his wife did an amazing job. I ate there several times. And so when that spot came available and we went and looked at it, it was too good to pass up. I swore that I was going to wait until the Olympics were done to do whatever I wanted to do next, which I knew I wanted to open something. But it was too good. So we just
patience isn't your strong suit.
Honestly, no, not at all. But I was fortunate, like everything in my career, I've been fortunate to be around really good people that probably make me look much better than I am. So Crenshaw Reed, who's a co-owner with me, lifelong friend, he grew up with me in the restaurant business. He was a busboy for me when he was 15. He's only a couple years younger than me, but he worked for me at a restaurant in town. And so we worked, for the better part of 18 years together.
Did you ever, sorry to interrupt, but did you ever see that when you guys were kids? This is something we really want to do. I mean, what a wild ride.
We kind of talked about it. And I've always talked with people. I mean, you work in the business long enough. It's long hours. You always kind of daydream and have conversations. That's another reason I love the restaurant industry. Everybody's pretty honest. You can talk politics and different subjects there. But no, I mean, we'd kind of talked about it. And so when I saw the space and knew I had to do it, and I talked to my wife, she's also a cooner as well, which I need her.
I hear she does some clerical work for you, some numbers.
Yeah, absolutely.
The really important part of it.
Stuff I don't like to do. Yeah. But so I just, I talked to her, and then I talked to Crenshaw because I knew what I had ahead of me with what was going on there, and just didn't want to pass it up. So we went in and looked at it and put some things together. And, I opened probably 4 restaurants for the former company I used to work for. I might not have had my own cash on the table, but I did all the other things. So I was excited. I mean, the only thing I was nervous about some of the other parts that luckily my wife was able to cover, but we were really excited. I like putting teams together and exciting people with menus and just camaraderie and team building. So that's really what we wanted to do at Brood, is create a really good environment. My kids work there, so I feel confident.
Cool.
I wanted to create what I thought was was the best part of the restaurant industry. So, we're only open 5 days a week for dinner. That's not by design. I mean, it's by design.
Right.
Because I wanted to make sure that our staff could have a balanced work life.
I think it's really important. There's a handful of restaurants that do that now, and I think it's because chefs and owners like you recognize that servers and staff, they've got to have a break every once in a while because, you got brunch, you got Sunday supper, you got lunch, you got every day.
A lot of the restaurants that I used to run were open 7 days a week, 365, nonstop, every holiday. And I would say in this day and age, currently, it's not sustainable. And it's not sustainable from a personal point of view, an employee point of view. Honestly, it beats up on the equipment, the facility. I just don't think it's smart.
Yeah.
So when we designed Brood, we designed it with intent like that. We've had a lot of cry for lunch and brunch at some point, which I've told people, I'm like, listen, let me get through this Olympic thing, and we'll see what's going on. But I've got a lot of great people that work there, great front house staff. We've got a great Chef Josh Waskey, and some other cooks that have been through the culinary arts program or had some different experiences. And so we've got a good group there. We're excited.
Yeah. And I think I read it took about 10 months to put everything together. I mean, which is, that's no easy feat. I mean, that's pretty amazing. I know you had the space and you didn't have to knock down walls and things like that.
It was pretty quick. Honestly, we would have gotten open about 3 months prior if it wasn't for some state
that's crazy,
licenses.
Like who opens a restaurant in less than a year?
Well, the space, like I said, we're really fortunate with the space. But I mean, a lot of these things, like I said, we've done before. I mean, the food changes, the alcohol changes, the whatever changes, but there's systems that you always put in place. You're always designing a master recipe book. You're always putting together closing sheets for cash. And I mean, a lot of that stuff is similar.
Yeah. Kind of like, well, it's like publishing, running a magazine. No day is the same, but there are certain systems in place that we make sure keep things running. Yeah. So you mentioned the menu, and I want to talk about the menu because, again, your pictures are like, oh my gosh, ridiculous. You've described the concept as Southern-inspired modern American with a European influence. I find that interesting, given all your time in Europe lately. So a brief glance at the list shows dishes like chicken schnitzel with grits, collard greens, Alabama sauce, and pickled mustard seeds, and braised short ribs with horseradish crumb, mustard jus, white cheddar mashed potatoes, and broccoli with Parmesan and lemon. It's 10 o'clock on a Monday morning, and I'm ready to eat Brood dinner, just so you know.
Thank you.
So what inspired you for these particular dishes?
There's a balance all over the place. We were going into Salem. We wanted to bring something new to Salem. So obviously there's a steakhouse, and there's some things that are there that are staples. So we wanted to be different. Yeah. But I also wanted to make something that people wanted to go to more than special occasions. I wanted to make something that they felt comfortable dining there every week if they had time. Hopefully, we would appreciate that.
That Salem community, they come out strong for people that they love.
They're very supportive. It's an amazing community.
Absolutely.
So I wanted to make it approachable from that standpoint. So I was very conscious of the cost and the pricing and what we were doing. I wanted to make some things that I knew were approachable. And so that's where I think where we are here, Southern speaks true to us. Even if you're not from here and you're transplanted, grits eventually end up on your plate. And so that's where it started. And from there, I don't know, as a cook, I've had plenty of dishes or ideas over time that I'll use the same concept over time because things work for a reason. And certain things, like you said, were inspired from being in Europe and having the good fortune of traveling. And so that's kind of how it started. And it wasn't just me. It's me and my co-owner Crenshaw, and even me late night having a beer with my wife or talking to Josh, and again, we're all better together. And so collectively, a lot of these kind of ideas were kind of born. So for example, the chicken schnitzel is probably one of our most popular dishes. When I went to Luxembourg in 2018 as a spectator. Again, I kind of watched this thing at these couple competitions before I tried out. I hopped on a train because we had a few hours to kill, and we took a quick trip to Belgium for the day. I couldn't tell you what town. It was in the middle of nowhere. We got off. It was rainy. It looked like Seattle. And we wandered to some small restaurant that happened to be open. And there was a guy there with his dog. He was drinking a glass of wine. It was like 9:30 in the morning. And
I got to go to Belgium.
Right? Very small lady in the back. And so we had a really great feast. And just a great braised pork shank and schnitzel and a lot of the same things. And there's a couple of those things that I always loved and brought back, which is why there's mussels and frites on the menu and a chicken schnitzel. I always hate chicken dishes in a restaurant because you want to make them fresh and from scratch. And they take some time because you want to reach an internal temperature of 165 and make sure it's cooked all the way through because nobody likes medium rare chicken. And so as I was thinking about schnitzel and things like that. That's where the chicken schnitzel came from. I'm like, well, schnitzel takes 2 seconds in the deep fryer. We'll pound it out thin. It's
not
crispy.
unlike chicken fried steak in the South.
No,
so, you know.
Yeah. It's funny. You come up with an idea and you realize it connects in more ways. Than you think,
I love it though. But I'm always curious, like the fact that a chef can look at 6 different ingredients and then the final plate is the result. Like, that's amazing. It's food math, you know? Like, how do you do that?
I think it's like a spider web where you start with an idea. I mean, I always tell my students, it's like, I don't think many of us will create new flavor combinations. I just don't. I mean, you can buy the Flavor Bible. It's a 400-page book that'll give you, everything paired with artichokes from A to Z. But I think you can start with an idea and then build on that with things that work. There's a reason that tomatoes, mozzarella, and balsamic work, and these things work, but I can represent them in a different way. And to me, that's the crafting part of cooking. I don't know.
No, it's like I said, it's always been fascinating. I love watching all the competition cooking shows. Like, I'm a big fan of those. I hope I see you in all of them soon.
I don't know about that.
That might be your next one. I don't know. Maybe once you're done with the Olympics. So in terms of flavors and ingredients, are there any ones that you'd love to cook with or, eat yourself?
Yes.
Everything.
Yeah, I don't know. No, I don't know. I tend to like international flavors. I love Southern flavors because I grew up here, but I like bold. I like acid. I like hot sauce. I mean,
yeah. Well, you'll get it at Brood, I guess, because you're bringing those flavors in.
Yeah, absolutely.
Good. And so, of course, we got to talk about your culinary instruction because this is such an important part of what you're doing. I mean, along with the 42 other things we've listed today. But so a culinary instructor at the Al Pollard Culinary School at Virginia Western Community College. Again, I don't know when you sleep. But what is it like teaching the next generation of chefs?
It's the most rewarding job. One of the most rewarding jobs I've ever had. Let me be very careful about my words. But I love it. I've been teaching there for 11 years. When I was still running those other restaurants, I got a job teaching there, and it reinvigorated me as a person, to be honest. It's funny, being in a restaurant, it's very easy to get burnt out. It's very easy to you're cooking the same dish over and over. Consistency is key. That's how we bring customers back. You want to make sure that you have the same dish the first time you eat there as the next time. And so if you're not strategic about running specials and doing things that push your limits, it's very easy to get complacent. I feel like before I started teaching there, I was dealing with a little bit of that, like any other normal human being, and teaching just re-inspired me and still does to this day. Every semester there's a student that asks a question, or you show somebody something and you see the switch go where they get it. It's great. And honestly, it's funny. I don't think I realized it until I started teaching and thinking, it's like, well, that's how I should be in the restaurant. It's the same way. I should treat my staff the same way, and they need to be inspired the same way my students need to be inspired. And how you do that, you've got to figure it out. Some people are motivated by, learning new butchery techniques. Some people are just motivated by plating food or pastry or whatever that is. I don't know. I think it's our responsibility as leaders, chefs, whatever your job is, to hopefully help with that.
Right. And I would assume as well that the students are inspiring you, maybe even teaching you new things. I mean, I don't know about technique or anything like that, but certainly you're learning something too.
Yes. I mean, ingredients, it's like my 12-year-old son. I learn all the new lingo and all that, so I can say
so my husband's a middle school teacher, and he'll come home and be like, the kid said this today. I'm like, that's a noun. Why are they using it as a verb? Like, what?
First time my son's like, Dad, that's cap. I'm like, what? I don't understand what that means. Like, is this like a Marvel reference? I mean,
that shows my age, because I'm like, oh, that's definitely a Marvel reference.
Right.
Well, that's hysterical. Well, in terms of the new chefs, I mean, what sort of advice would you give to them on any part of their journey, whether they're starting out or they're trying to open a restaurant? What's your advice to them?
Stay inspired. I mean, it's crazy. When I was at Johnson Wales, when I went to culinary school, and I don't know, before iPhones really became their thing, but seriously, I mean, the only way I could learn about a new technique or see something is to subscribe to Wine Gourmet or Gourmet Magazine. Like, literally, I had to get magazine subscriptions in the mail to see this stuff.
We thank you for that.
No problem. And it's, media's different. It's changed. It's morphed. It's everywhere. I mean, you have the ability to flip your phone on and find anything in the world at your fingertips. Now, you have to be smart enough to find
I was going to say, sometimes that's like too much information.
The right resource, and overloaded, but, you've got to find a way to stay inspired. And I always tell my students you're going to have times where, I don't know, everybody thinks life is balance and you're constantly always in balance. It's like, no, you're going to have holidays where you're going to spend more time at work, and you just have to have the self-awareness to bring it back. same thing kind of goes with food and staying inspired. There's going to be times where it's like, I don't want to watch another chef documentary. I don't want to look at another recipe.
You don't want to watch The Bear on repeat over and over again?
I do, yeah, although, a funny story with that. That gave me extreme anxiety. Me and my wife...
I have heard that from chefs.
When the second season came out and they're opening that restaurant was when we were opening Brood. And so we were watching this
way too close to
in like June, and we're waiting on our ABC license. And there's a particular episode where they're in a dinner rush, and I was just sitting there, and my wife's like, "You've drank like 2 beers in like 15 minutes. What's wrong?" And I'm like, it was
stressing you out.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I get stressed out, and I'm not in the kitchen, so I can't imagine. Like, that is way too close to real life.
But anyways, not to get distracted with what you were talking about, but it's just, staying inspired and finding balance of that. Sometimes I want to watch a soccer game instead of food, but I need to always make sure I come back to that and get excited about going to work, because we're all going to have to work for probably forever.
Oh,
so
can't win $1 million, huh? Shoot.
No.
Oh, well.
But you got to enjoy what you do and hopefully find the joy in it. And there's not joy 100% of the time. I don't particularly love cooking Thanksgiving food all the time or at that time of year, but you find the good.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. And so last question, this is the bonus question I ask everybody. Okay. So you and your wife, Lindsay, and your son, one son?
Ryland, yes.
Ryland.
One son, 2 daughters.
One son, 2 daughters. Well, you got a big family then. So where are you guys going in the region when you're not opening a restaurant, instructing other chefs, and cooking for the Culinary Olympics?
We spend a lot of time in Charlotte.
Yeah.
That's my alma mater. I went to school there, and my son plays travel soccer, and so I've tried to find ways to inspire him without pushing him or being the overbearing sports dad. So when Charlotte had their first MLS franchise started 2 years ago, supporter seats tickets were pretty inexpensive, so we have season tickets. I usually make it down to 1 game a month or every other month, and I'll sell the other one on whatever. But just to see his face being in an arena like that with professionals and the environment, it's a fantastic environment. If you haven't gone, I highly recommend it.
Cool.
But we spend a lot of time there, and if the girls don't want to go, they'll go shopping or whatever, and that way. And I've seen my son's love for the game grow, and whatever he does with it's up to him. But I feel like it's, again, my job to inspire him, no different than anybody else.
I hear inspiration should be your keyword of 2024, I think.
Well, apparently. When I said it this last time, I was like, 1, 2, 3, okay.
No, that's good. That's good. No, it's a good brand, good word. And so anything else you wanted to share with listeners, whether it's about Brood or the Culinary Olympics, because we can't wait to hear the results of this, and we're all cheering you on to bring home the gold.
No, just stop by and see us, please. We'd love you to be a part of our Brood. Brood, the name of the restaurant came from family. Chef Switzer left a lot of roosters around when it was Blue Apron Red Rooster Bar, and we didn't want to destroy that. We wanted to pay homage to it. And my wife had a friend at work who came up with the name. And the first time they said it, I'm like, that's kind of weird. And then it kind of stuck with me. I'm like, I really like it. So we always kind of use that. So please stop by and see us. Root for Team USA if you see us online. And no, we appreciate it.
Fantastic. Congratulations on your many, many accomplishments. But we are rooting you on from here. Certainly. We know
much.
Team USA.
I appreciate you having me on.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you again. Ted Polfelt, Chef Ted Polfelt, the Culinary Olympics bound executive chef and co-owner of Brood Restaurant and Bar. Thank you again for being on From Print to Podcast today. Our first episode of our second season. So we really appreciate
Thanks
you.
for having me.
I know listeners and myself, along with readers and plenty of others here in the region, will be cheering you on to bring the trophy home back to Roanoke, we hope. And so you can learn more about Ted, his journey to the Culinary Olympics, and his excellent new Salem restaurant, Brood Restaurant and Bar, in our latest issue on newsstands now, or you can head over to theroanoker.com to learn more.